Imagine a single, brutal slap. Not in a dark alley or a private room, but in a place of healing, a place meant for safety. The sound was so sharp and so shocking, it could be heard through the entire hospital floor. It was a slap that didn't just break the silence. It shattered a woman's sense of security, all while she was at her most vulnerable. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our new videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. And where are you watching from? Please leave your city or country in the comments. Thank you so much. Now, let's return to our protagonist. The gray sky hung heavy over the city, a weight that refused to lift. The cold, white light of the hospital flooded the emergency room. The steady, constant beat of the fetal monitor echoed like a drum in the tense atmosphere. A pregnant woman sat beside the bed, her hand clutching her stomach, her face pale with exhaustion and worry. She had just endured a sharp pain that had forced the doctors to admit her for observation. This place was supposed to be safe, but no one imagined that in a matter of seconds, it would become the scene of a tragedy that left everyone paralyzed. Her wealthy husband, Richard, walked in. His expensive suit was a sharp contrast to his wife's exhausted figure. His eyes were icy, his lips pressed together as if containing a rage about to explode. Without a single word of concern, he lunged forward, and his hand struck her cheek with brutal force. The slap echoed through the white, sterile room, drowning out even the sound of the machines. Sarah staggered, her hand flying to her face, and then she instinctively protected her belly, shielding the fragile life within her. The entire room stood still. A nurse carrying a tray of medicine stopped, about to drop a glass vial. The doctor on duty watched in disbelief. Some patients and family members in nearby beds had heard the hollow thud and approached, peering through the half-open door. The atmosphere became so heavy that every breath sounded loud. Before Sarah could even react, a laugh burst from the corner. The mistress, Valerie, in a garish red dress and crimson lipstick, leaned disdainfully against the wall, her arms crossed. Her mocking laugh sliced like a knife into Sarah's trembling heart. Her eyes shone with satisfaction, as if the slap were the show she had been waiting for all along. An elderly patient whispered to the nurse, "She's pregnant. How could he lay a hand on her?" The nurse swallowed hard, her hands trembling, but she didn't dare intervene. They all knew this man was a millionaire, someone with enough power to ruin anyone's career in the hospital with a single call. Sarah continued to tremble, her hand clenched into a fist. Her cheek burned with pain, and her heart hammered wildly. Between fear and anguish, she turned to her husband, tears welling in her eyes. And with trembling lips, she whispered, "You dare to hit me right here when I still have our child in my belly?" Silence fell over the room again. The monitor began beeping faster, and the line on the screen became erratic, amplifying the tension. A young man waiting for his appointment in the adjacent room discreetly raised his phone and pressed record. The small red light blinked on the lens, a silent witness capturing the truth. The millionaire didn't notice. He simply took a deep breath and stood tall with a look of contempt, as if the slap were nothing out of the ordinary. The mistress laughed again, her cackles echoing against the white walls. Meanwhile, tears ran down Sarah's cheeks as she tightly clutched her belly, trembling while desperately muttering, "Please, protect my baby." And the camera didn't blink, recording every unforgettable moment. After the slap that reverberated through the room, the hospital sank into a suffocating silence. Only the fetal monitor continued its urgent beeping, reminding everyone that within that fragile body, there was still a life that needed protection. Sarah trembled, holding her cheek, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. Her other hand clung to her belly, as if to shield her child from any further blows. A single tear slid down her swollen cheek and fell onto the cold, white tile floor. The ceiling lights made every detail stand out, the redness blooming on her skin, the loose strands of hair after the blow. She let out a faint sob, pressing her lips together to hold it in. But the sound escaped, fragile and undeniable. The young nurse stood paralyzed. Her hands shook so much that the tray of medicines almost fell. She backed away, her eyes full of concern, yet immobilized by fear. She knew that this man was no ordinary patient. He was a millionaire, with enough power to destroy anyone's career in this hospital with a single call. The doctor on duty remained silent, torn between his duty to protect and his fear of the powerful man before him. Families of other patients in the hallway had also approached after hearing the noise. They looked through the small window in the door, murmuring among themselves. Whispers ran through the hallway, each word filled with indignation. An elderly woman shook her head and said softly to her son, "Hitting a woman is bad enough. To do it to a pregnant woman in a hospital, that's inhumane." Sarah collapsed into a chair, her shoulders shaking with sobs. She tried to breathe, but each breath was caught in her chest, broken and ragged. One single question hammered in her mind without an answer. How could he be so cruel? For years, she had endured his coldness and his hurtful words, but she never imagined that one day, in the middle of a hospital and in front of so many witnesses, he would humiliate her with such a ruthless blow. The mistress continued to stand with an arrogant smile, watching the woman crumble in the chair as if she were enjoying a play she had written herself. Her laugh sounded again, shrill and sharp, feeding the flames of humiliation. Some witnesses outside the door frowned, unable to bear such arrogance. The air in the room felt stifling. No one dared to speak, but everyone knew that a line had been crossed. Sarah was not only a victim of violence, she was being publicly degraded. Her expression of pain, the tear sliding down her face, her trembling hands clinging to her belly, everything was etched in the memory of those who witnessed it. Finally, a doctor took a step forward, his voice firm but cautious. "She needs rest and protection. No one can harm her further." His words pierced the tense air, soft but sharp, a reminder that what had just happened was not a simple family matter that could be hidden. Sarah raised her eyes, red from tears, looking around the room. The cold light, the astonished faces, the constant beeping of the monitor. Everything wove together into a memory she knew would never be erased. In her heart, she whispered to the life inside her, "Forgive me, my son, for making you witness this." Outside, several phones continued to record in silence. A red light blinked steadily, capturing every second. No one spoke, but everyone knew that this would no longer be a secret. After those suffocating moments when all eyes were fixed on the wealthy husband, he cleared his throat. His face showed no remorse. On the contrary, there was a trace of defiance. He adjusted the collar of his expensive suit, inhaled deeply as if regaining his composure, and spoke in a low but authoritative voice that filled the room. "Don't exaggerate. It was just a hand motion. Nothing serious." His eyes swept the room coldly, as if daring anyone to contradict him. Sarah continued to tremble, one hand on her belly, her eyes red and swollen from tears. She tried to speak, but emotion choked her throat. Valerie let out another laugh, sharp as a blade, backing up his excuse. "Exactly. She always dramatizes everything. It was just a little touch, and she's acting like she was assaulted." Her words made several people in the hallway frown with disgust. The doctor on duty narrowed his eyes, though he remained silent, simply observing. Richard continued, All of you should stay out of my family business. My wife is pregnant. Her hormones are unstable. Her emotions are unpredictable. I was just trying to calm her down, and maybe I was a little rough." His excuses flowed smoothly, as if he had rehearsed them. He was trying to transform a clear act of violence into a minor accident. His tone dripped with contempt, as if everyone present were beneath him. The mistress tilted her head with a smile of approval, pleased. A young man holding his phone frowned and whispered to the person next to him, "Does he really think anyone will believe him?" That was a hard slap, not an accidental gesture. The other person nodded, their eyes burning with indignation. Meanwhile, Sarah gathered the little courage she had left. Her voice rose, trembling. "You hurt me. You scared our child. Stop making excuses. Everyone saw what you did." But her words were immediately interrupted. He pointed a finger at her and thundered in a harsh voice, "Shut up! Don't embarrass me in front of everyone. You're the one who pushes me to this, always arguing, always making me lose face." The tension in the room thickened. Several nurses looked at each other, their eyes full of indignation, but none dared to speak. Richard took a step forward. His gaze swept over everyone as if to remind them of his power. "I pay for everything here. If anyone dares to interfere, I will call my lawyer. Believe me, no one in this hospital can face the consequences." The room sank into silence. No one challenged him. The mistress let out a theatrical sigh and approached, placing her hand on his arm with a sweet voice, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't get too worked up. They just don't understand you." Her smile returned, a public mockery that everyone perceived. Sarah lowered her head, tears running down her face. The burning of the slap was still there, but it was his cold and calculated words that truly crushed her. She was no longer just a victim of violence. She was being painted as weak and humiliated in front of countless eyes, stripped of her dignity. In the hallway, an elderly woman shook her head. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "It's not the first time, but it is the first time everyone has seen it with their own eyes." The sentence cut through the silence like a blade, revealing a truth that no excuse could cover. Suddenly, the heavy hospital door opened with a dull sound that made everyone inside flinch. All eyes turned to the illuminated hallway. In the doorway stood a middle-aged man. He wore a dark suit, simple but imposing, and his mere presence radiated authority. His steps were firm, his gaze unwavering, his face marked by the years, but with eyes lit with strength. No one in the room recognized him at first, but his confident stride made it clear he was no ordinary man. He was the pregnant woman's father, and he was also a renowned CEO in the financial world. However, at that moment, he was not there as a businessman. He was there as a father who had just seen his daughter suffer. Sarah looked up, her tear-filled eyes shining as she recognized the familiar figure. Her trembling lips whispered a single word. "Dad," a syllable loaded with pain and hope. The man nodded softly. His eyes softened as he looked at his daughter, before hardening again as he looked at the man who had hit her. Richard hesitated for a second, though he hid it with arrogance. He scoffed. "And who are you to meddle in my family affairs? This doesn't concern you." The mistress lifted her chin with confidence, convinced that no one could stop them. The man did not answer immediately. He entered the room completely and went straight to his daughter's side. He put a firm hand on her shoulder to reassure her, and then spoke in a calm but resonant voice. "No one has the right to harm my daughter, especially when she is carrying an innocent life within her." The words hit the room like a hammer blow. Several nurses exhaled with relief, grateful that someone had finally dared to confront the powerful abuser. People in the hallway leaned forward, whispering with anticipation, feeling the change in the air. Richard laughed dryly, trying to cover his discomfort. "Do you know who I am? I could buy this hospital in a single day. Don't think your words intimidate me." His voice sounded firm, but his eyes betrayed a spark of doubt as he met the man's unyielding gaze. The father's lips curved into a slight smile, not of fear, but of defiance. He slowly took a thin folder from his jacket and threw it on the side table. The thud made the mistress jump. "You might buy hospitals, but you can't buy the truth. I have all the proof of your abuse and the lies you tried to hide." The room froze again, this time in surprise. The mistress bit her lip. Her mocking smile disappeared. Richard became rigid, his hand trembling and his eyes darting away. The father moved closer. His voice resonated like a verdict. "You forget something. Behind her is not just family, there is justice, and justice will never be on the side of a cruel man." The statement fell like thunder. In the hallway, someone whispered, "Who is he? He looks like a senior executive." A nurse murmured, "No, that's the CEO of the biggest corporation in the city." The news spread quickly, and the atmosphere of the hospital changed, charged with new energy. Sarah remained there, with fresh tears falling down her cheeks. But this time, it wasn't just despair. A spark of hope shone in her tired eyes. Beside her, her father stood like an unbreakable wall, ready to face anything to protect her. The atmosphere in the hospital room had become so heavy, it felt like the air itself was pressing down on everyone. The father stood firm beside his daughter, his gaze as sharp as a sword aimed at the man who had caused all this. But instead of backing down, the arrogant millionaire smiled with contempt, with a glint of defiance in his eyes. He took a step forward. His voice was a low growl. "You think a few threats will make me back down? I have an army of lawyers, and with a single call, anyone who dares to cross me will lose everything." His words dripped with menace. The mistress clung to his arm and smiled mockingly, as if to show that they had all the power. The father remained serene, with his hand on his daughter's shoulder as an anchor of strength. He didn't raise his voice. He simply replied, slowly and firmly, "Your money may buy the silence of some, but it will never buy the truth. And when the truth comes to light, it will be stronger than any contract you possess." His words brought a silence over the room. Several nurses looked at each other, their eyes filled with silent agreement. But the millionaire was not finished. He took his phone from his pocket and waved it in front of everyone. "I'll call my lawyer right now. I'll make this entire hospital apologize for allowing strangers to interfere in my personal business." The mistress's shrill laugh broke the silence. She added her venom. "And who do you think you are? Just some old man getting into his daughter's problems. We're the ones who have the real power here." The witnesses in the hallway began to murmur again. More phones were raised, with the red recording lights shining in the window. They knew that what they were seeing was no longer a simple domestic dispute. It was evidence, and it had to be documented and shared. Sarah remained seated next to the bed, with both hands on her stomach. Fear was still in her eyes, but now it was mixed with determination as she watched her father stand against the man who had abused her. Tears were still falling, but this time they carried the weight of relief. She was no longer alone. The father didn't give the millionaire room to manipulate the situation. He looked him directly in the eye, with a firm and unwavering voice. "You can threaten all you want here, but you have just become a criminal in front of dozens of witnesses, and what is being recorded now will never disappear." A heavy silence fell again. The millionaire squeezed his phone tightly. His fingers trembled despite his effort to hide it. The mistress looked at him. Her mocking smile disappeared, replaced by a spark of worry on her made-up face. The father took another step forward. His deep voice resonated with authority. "You can cancel contracts. You can try to intimidate this hospital, But you can't erase justice, and justice will knock on your door sooner than you think." His words ignited the room like a flame, burning the millionaire's arrogance. For those watching, the balance of power was beginning to shift. The fear of wealth and influence gave way to something stronger, the belief that the truth would prevail. The atmosphere in the hospital room thickened to the point that every breath felt heavy. The father remained standing next to his daughter. His words still floated in the air, provoking murmurs in the hallway. But instead of backing down, the millionaire exploded. He slammed his phone against the table, rage burning in his eyes. "You dare to humiliate me in front of everyone? I'll show you who has the power here." He lunged forward and grabbed his wife's arm as she sat on the bed. The violent tug almost made her fall to the cold tile floor. The fetal monitor exploded in frantic beeps, making everyone's heart race. A nurse screamed, "Stop now! She's pregnant! Don't you hear the alarm?" But the millionaire completely ignored her. He squeezed harder, growling in front of everyone. "You're nothing but a disgrace to me. You've humiliated me in front of everyone. Today, you will learn your place." The mistress stood behind him, smiling with a twisted delight. Her eyes shone with malice. She even took out her phone, recording the scene as if turning Sarah's suffering into a spectacle. But her blatant act only fueled the indignation around. Voices whispered from the hallway, "He's gone too far." And she's laughing? Despicable. The father took a step forward. His voice thundered, cutting through the chaos. "Let go of my daughter. If you don't, all the evidence I have will be made public right now." His words fell like a knife. The millionaire froze for an instant, but his pride forced him to squeeze harder, his grip trembling with rage. Sarah cried, holding her swollen belly with her other hand. "Please, stop. The baby, please. Don't harm my child." Her plea went through the room, tearing the hearts of everyone present. Some in the hallway could no longer stand still. More phones were raised. The lights flickered through the glass as people captured every second. The breaking point came when an elderly doctor, a man who had been silent for years in the face of power, finally stepped forward. He forcefully pushed the millionaire's arm away and stood like a shield in front of the trembling woman. "Enough. This is a hospital, not a place for you to abuse your wife. You no longer have any authority here." And the room erupted. The father took advantage of the moment immediately, standing shoulder to shoulder with the doctor. His eyes burned, his voice low but imposing. "You have become a spectacle. This hospital, the world outside, everyone will see exactly who you are." The millionaire's face turned pale, with beads of sweat on his forehead. The mistress fell silent. Her phone trembled in her hand. Her arrogance had disappeared. The cameras clicked. The videos kept recording. The hospital room was transformed into a stage where the truth was exposed for everyone. Sarah remained on the bed, her eyes still wet with tears. But now there was a flicker of determination in them. She understood that what had just happened was no longer just her personal pain. It had become a public accusation, a truth that could never be denied, forcing her abuser to bow before the light of justice. After the suffocating tension of the previous moments, the hospital room seemed frozen in time. Sarah was still sitting on the bed, her hair disheveled, and her face streaked with tears. However, a different light began to shine in her eyes. It was no longer pure fear. It was determination. She took a deep breath. Her trembling hand rested firmly on her belly. The constant beeping of the fetal monitor resonated like a drum, as if encouraging the strength that was growing inside her. Her father was next to her, his gaze firm, giving her courage. A strange silence fell over the room. Everyone was waiting to see what she would do. Slowly, Sarah got up. Her legs faltered at first, but in seconds, she stood tall, looking directly at the man who had hit her with such ruthless arrogance. The room fell into absolute silence when her voice resonated, clear and firm, without a tremor. "You thought I would be quiet while you humiliated me. You believed that just because I was pregnant, I would simply endure it. You were wrong." Her words cut through the sterile air of the room, leaving everyone stunned. A young nurse clenched her fists, as if drawing strength from that statement. The father nodded slightly, with pride shining in his eyes. The millionaire's face twisted. Disbelief was reflected in his features. He tried to smile with disdain, but the corners of his mouth trembled. "What are you trying to do? Don't think that just because some people are on your side, you can challenge me." The mistress intervened with a mocking laugh. "You're nothing more than a weak, pathetic woman. What can you do besides cry?" Sarah raised her chin, her eyes burning with a fire never seen before. Her voice grew stronger, cutting through the air. "I can do the one thing you fear most. I'll tell the truth. I'll make the world see who you really are, and I will never be afraid again." The hallway erupted in murmurs. More phones were raised. More recording lights flickered. It was no longer a private discussion. It was a public declaration. The father took a step forward, his voice deep, firm, and protective. "My daughter has endured too much. Now it's time for her to speak with her own voice, and I will be here to protect her." The energy in the room changed. The woman who had previously been crumbling in tears was now standing tall, her shoulders trembling, but firm. She was no longer just a victim. In her eyes, people saw defiance and the reclaiming of her dignity. Richard took half a step back. For the first time, his arrogant confidence faltered. The mistress swallowed hard. Her mocking smile had disappeared. The balance of power was slipping away from them. Sarah wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. Her voice continued to resonate firmly. "From this moment on, I will not be silent. You can continue to threaten me, but you will never again make me bend." The declaration broke the silence. Whispers of encouragement filled the room. Some even nodded in approval. The breaking point had arrived. The woman who had been knocked down now remained unbreakable, and this time, she would never again allow herself to be trampled. The atmosphere in the hospital room remained tense, but now the looks towards Sarah had changed. They no longer saw her as a silent victim, but as a woman ready to emerge from the shadows. Her silence had given way to determination, and everyone could feel it. Her father slowly advanced. He took a thick folder from the leather briefcase he always carried, with the metal clips closed firmly. The metallic snap as it opened resonated in the room, intensifying the tension. He placed it on the table, with a deep voice that sounded like a bell. "All your excuses mean nothing anymore. This is the truth, and the truth cannot be hidden." A nurse's eyes widened in surprise. People in the hallway craned their necks to look through the window, with the lights of their phones reflected in the glass. Everyone wanted to know what was inside that folder. The father opened it, pulling out photographs of old bruises on his daughter's body. The images were heartbreaking. Purple marks, handprints, undeniable proof that it wasn't the first time. Then he unfolded printed messages, revealing the millionaire's controlling and threatening words. "If you dare to speak, I'll keep the baby. If you challenge me, you'll leave with nothing." Each line was like a blade that tore through the room, exposing the ugly truth. The room was stunned. The mistress went pale. With the phone trembling in her hand, her mocking laugh had disappeared. Richard stammered, his throat tight, his voice broken. He tried to find words, but he only managed a weak denial. "It's all just a misunderstanding. Everyone knows women exaggerate, don't they?" The father interrupted him immediately, with a voice as cold as steel. Are you really going to deny clear evidence? These are not words. These are images, messages, proofs that cannot be denied. Sarah, now serene, stood tall next to her father. She raised her head, and her voice spread throughout the room. You always thought I would stay silent. You believed that your money would cover everything. But today, you will not get away with it. Everything has been recorded, and everyone here has witnessed it. The hallway erupted in murmurs. A voice hissed in fury. It wasn't the first time. He's been doing it for years. Another added, now he has no escape. The father took out a business card and placed it firmly in front of the millionaire. It seems you forgot something. I am not just her father. I am the CEO of the corporation you have been begging to work with. And from this moment on, all doors will be closed to you. The words fell like a thunderbolt. The millionaire's body went limp, with sweat running down his face. The mistress took a step back, her face pale, unable to utter a word. Everyone in the room understood. The truth had been completely exposed. There was no longer a place to hide, and no excuse could save the man who had once been arrogant in front of everyone. After the evidence was exposed, the atmosphere in the hospital room became heavier than ever. All eyes turned to the millionaire. His face had turned pale. His hand was squeezing his phone tightly, but his trembling fingers could no longer hold the arrogance he once had. The mistress was next to him, biting her lip, her expression undone. The mocking smile she once wore had completely disappeared. The whispers in the hallway grew. Witnesses murmured that he was an abuser, that the truth had been recorded and would soon be spread. A young man whispered to his friend, "If this reaches social media, his career is over." His friend nodded, his gaze fixed on the flashing red light of the phone that was still recording. Then, the millionaire's phone vibrated hard. Messages and missed calls from business partners lit up the screen. He opened them only to find cold notifications. "We are forced to suspend the contract. We are sorry. We cannot continue the partnership under these circumstances." His face lost all color. Sweat ran down his temples. The father remained firm next to his daughter. His voice was serene, but resonant. "You thought money could buy everything, but you forgot that reputation and integrity are the true basis of success. You have destroyed everything you built with your own hands." Several nurses nodded subtly. Their eyes no longer showed fear, but contempt for the man who once walked with arrogance. The mistress pulled at his arm, whispering desperately, "Let's go now. Don't stay here any longer." But the millionaire brusquely pushed her hand away, his face twisted with panic. "No, they can't do this to me. I'm the one with the power." He yelled, but his voice broke, stripped of its usual authority. An elderly doctor finally spoke, in a calm but firm tone. "You have no power here. We will immediately notify the police. This is domestic violence, confirmed by witnesses and evidence." His words carried the weight of a verdict, freezing the room in silence. Moments later, 2 hospital security guards entered. They stood on either side of the millionaire, with stern looks. "Sir, you will have to come with us and cooperate with the investigation." The firmness of their words made panic reflect on his face. He stumbled back, trying to resist, but the undeniable truth left him without strength. The mistress backed toward the door, desperate to escape, but the crowd in the hallway had already gathered, blocking her exit. Several phones were pointed at them, recording every second. Their humiliation was no longer confined to the hospital walls. It had become a public trial under the full light of scrutiny. Sarah sat back on the bed, with tears still falling. But they were no longer tears of weakness. In her eyes now burned determination, knowing that justice had begun to side with her. Her father placed a firm hand on her shoulder with a deep and reassuring voice. "You no longer have to be afraid. He will pay for everything." The millionaire bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. The man who once boasted of power over everyone was now nothing more than a broken figure, surrounded by truth, justice, and the contempt of those who once feared him. After all the chaos and tension, the hospital room began to calm down. The constant beeping of the fetal monitor continued, but this time it was no longer frantic. It was serene and rhythmic, like a calming lullaby. Sarah was in the bed, her eyes still swollen from tears, but her gaze shone brighter than ever. Beside her, her father stood like an unbreakable wall, while the millionaire was escorted by security under the watchful eyes of everyone. The crowd in the hallway watched in silence. Some nodded in silence, as if they had just witnessed justice being served. The mistress was taken away from the scene, her head bowed, stripped of the arrogant smile that had once mocked the victim. The small world inside the hospital had changed. The heavy air was gone, replaced by the belief that justice still existed. The father sat next to his daughter, gently taking her hand. His voice softened. It was no longer harsh as when he confronted the abuser. "You did very well. You stayed strong, and from now on, you will not be alone. Let me take care of the rest." Sarah pressed her lips together, with new tears falling. But this time, they were not bitter tears of despair. They were tears of liberation. She whispered, "I thought I would live in the shadows forever. But today, I know that the truth will always find its way to speak." A doctor approached. He checked the monitor and smiled calmly. "The baby is stable. There is no danger. You can rest easy." His words eased the weight in the room. A nurse placed a warm blanket over the woman's trembling shoulders. Outside, the videos of the incident were already spreading. Posts filled with indignation and solidarity multiplied on social media. Thousands of comments condemned the millionaire. The media labeled it a scandal that had shaken the city, showing the true face of a man who was once considered a model of success. His career had officially ended. Meanwhile, Sarah rested her head on her father's shoulder, her heart calmer than it had been in years. She no longer thought about the days of control, of blows, of humiliation. She only thought about the future, a future in which her child would grow up with love and true protection. The father's voice was firm, filled with a serene strength. "Rest now. Tomorrow you will begin a new chapter, a chapter without a trace of fear." The hospital room seemed lit by a different light, not the cold neon from the ceiling, but a warm glow of faith and liberation. Sarah closed her eyes. Her breathing was calm, her heart filled with new strength. The story ended with the image of a woman who was once knocked down, but now stood tall. She was no longer a victim, but proof of the power of truth and justice. As she fell asleep, she whispered one last line, like a final verdict. "No power will ever be able to hide the truth.